Hello everybody, welcome back Psych of Adjustment. How's everyone's stress level doing? So we saw kind of a straight up lecture on stress with 2.0, and now I'm going to start relating that more tightly to health. Is everyone feeling stressed? How do you like your virtual semester so far? I'm sitting here, I got a list of lectures that are ready to go. I just taped one and the camera wasn't working and I wasn't able to discern that, so I taped a whole lecture that doesn't exist, right? So I had to do it over again, and I wanted to get X number done today and I want to get some done Monday, and I could get stressed about it, but it's like, you know what, I'm just going to do my best and not succumb to the stress. The cats have been freaking berserk today. They have tried to destroy everything they can possibly, and I see they're working on it now again. We'll see if we can get through this. And have fun rather than have stress. I don't know. We'll see what happens. So, a rose by any other name would smell just as... Never mind. Let's coming up. What are we going to talk about? Work job stress, impact of stress on health, health psychology, coping with pain, healthy behaviors, and the stress of health. The stress of health, what the hell does that mean? All right, so the work week. For those of us who work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, this is probably appropriate. I'll let you look at that for a moment or two. When I worked at the paper mill, when I first started working the paper mill, I was introduced to a whole new kind of work week. Paper mill. Hi, Penelope. You came to say hello to everybody. At the paper mill. Paper mill runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, right? That's the way it runs. You don't stop a paper machine. Hence, you work rotating shifts. That was the way they decided to solve that problem. So I would work graveyard, and then for this week, right, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then next week, what do? You revert to day shift, and that's 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then the week following that, you go to swing shift, which is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m. And your days off always change. You got one 3-day weekend, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, a month, and you rotate shifts, and it kills people, right? So this wouldn't apply. And I'm serious. You look at guys that were like, been at the paper mill 30 years, and a 50-year-old guy looks like he's almost 70 because it robs people of so much sleep. Are you going to be a good girl now? You're not going to cause us problems? So, stress in the immune system. This is the deal with stress. That stress attacks the immune system. So you looked at Holmes and Rahe before, and you added up your stress score. Well, one of the benefits of a high stress score, and I'm saying that facetiously, is depressed immune system response. So the immune system is all those bodily systems, those bodily organs, right, that protect the body from foreign substances and threat, diseases, what have you. Immunosuppression is when the immune system is suppressed, and the human stress response is one way that can lead to immunosuppression. Now, a new field that studies this is psychoneuroimmunology. That is the role of perception on the immune system, and it's a boss title, psychoneuroimmunology. You get to have extra wide, business cards to fit the title on there, but it's a multidisciplinary field. That is, it draws from the knowledge, the wisdom drawn from many different different fields of study, right? So, how does stress affect us physically? That's a good question. The physical stress response begins with arousal. Remember that bear chewing on the kid's leg? Yeah, well, that would arouse stress, right? It's a physical stress response that stimulates the body's adaptive system. So the guy should get stronger. He should be able to move more quickly to escape the bear. At least that's the hope, right? But we talked about the problem is extended stress response, longer than evolution kind of set us up for. So the physical stress response, acute stress, is a temporary pattern of stress caused by a stressor with a clear onset and a clear offset. Oh my God, acute stress. There is a bear munching on my leg. I know what the source of the stress is. I know what the stressor is. And I know when the stressor is over. Either I die or I get away from the bear. right? It's not like, oh my God, will I ever finish my dissertation? And we engage in this stress party for months, for years, right? Just wearing us down. Now, chronic stress is that continuous state of stressful arousal persisting over time. Now, if you're keeping a journal, you might want to, at this point in time, stop and reflect. Are there some chronic stressors in your life? Can you identify them and begin to understand how they might affect you over the long haul? So there's two types of stressors, right? Acute, like the bear, and of course maybe children, raising children, right? Not a lot of you participating in that activity yet, but what do we see? Well, we can see that the intensity of chronic stressors can persist over time. Acute stressors is kind of a but notice most of our lives look more like the orange curve, that we have stressors combining with each other and then causing our overall stress level to fluctuate, but persisting over a long time, right? So one type of response, the acute stressor, activates fight or flight, and that's usually an effective solution, right? But notice a chronic stressor just activates a fight or flight mechanism continuously that doesn't really serve us very well. So this fight or flight response is the internal process that prepares the organism for struggle or escape. And I love this picture of this guy. This is one scrappy guy, man. He's been down this path before. He knows what he's doing. He's into the fight mode. Flight mode is equally effective under certain circumstances. Now, the tender befriend model is another human stress response, right? Animal response as well, where the model proposed that females are biologically predisposed to respond to stress by nurturing and protecting their offspring. Now, I know that's a bit sexist to say that females, but when we talk about genetics and we talk about biopsychology, I don't profess to be an expert, but men might have certain predispositions that are different than women on a physiological basis, right? And so go with that where you will, and look for evidence, empirical evidence, to support and or refute it, because you get evidence both ways. But men are we're socialized mostly into the fight mode, right? And then flight becomes embarrassing and a last resort. The tend befriend model, most men are not socialized into this process, right? And usually, you know, if we're in class and I try and get a guy to come up front and say, I'm stressed out, will you give me a hug, please? And most guys are like, you're freaking crazy, buddy. Can I go sit down now? So, but we're socialized differently. Whereas women can freely hug each other and they can say, I need a hug, you know, and there's women will line up to help her with that. In general, right? Now, let's look at a flowchart, because I love flowcharts. I don't know if you guys love flowcharts, but I got a stimulus here, and here comes the stimulus. Boom. It's perceived as a threat, and remember, perceived is that huge word there, because what one person might perceive as a threat, another person might perceive as an opportunity, right? So but let's assume it's perceived as a threat to move through the model, and then that activates the fight or flight response, right? And so depending on the nature of the appraisal, and remember we used that term before, I appraise the nature of the threat, I appraise my resources, and then I make the determination, is flight or fight more likely to be successful? And I choose from them. It really doesn't matter, because either is going to do the same activation. And this is an incomplete list, but hormones released are adrenaline, noradrenaline, cortisol, and since I've been doing this over the years, then oxytocin has now been another element that's been brought in as a component, and as our knowledge increases, so will other aspects, right? So now, what's the purpose of releasing these hormones? You know, psychologically, I perceive it as a threat, right? Now, that's going to cause organic changes in my body, and that is the hormones released. What is the release of the hormones? What does it make happen? Well, look, it increases the heart rate. So these are the physiological responses to the hormone release. It increases the respiration rate. right? Fat and glucose can be burned as a result of this. All these things enhance my ability to get stronger and to get faster. So this is an adaptive response to the tiger, to the bear, whatever it is. Now, blood flow is a mixed bag because blood flow is increased to my extremities, my arms and my legs, so I can run like the wind, run like Forrest Gump, right? Or I can get busy with my fists. Yeah, you can tell what a fighter I am. I don't even know maybe how to hold my fist, but so the blood flow, but where the blood flow is diminished to the core. So the stomach, the genitals, these are the areas don't need blood flow under a stress response. And note that how sometimes when you're stressed, you feel sick or you're not digesting your food properly. Why? Because the stomach's being robbed of blood, right? So, and we don't even need to go into the genital discussion. Perspiration goes up because that's our cooling system, but here is the bad one. The immune system is suppressed. That is, why devote blood to the immune system to fight off infection if we really need to just get our leg out of the bear's mouth? We'll worry about infection later, right? Now, a true flow chart has a diamond here, and this says threat subsides with a question mark. And now this represents two paths that this system can take. If the threat doesn't subside, the bear is still there, still munching on my legs, then my body reduces more adrenaline, more noradrenaline, more cortisol, etc., to kick these things in even a higher gear. And now here's where we get into this nasty loop. If the threat doesn't subside, we keep increasing the hormone release, and then it causes these things to happen. But this is the immune system keeps getting tamped down, tamped down, tamped down. And you can see if it's a chronic stressor that's causing this release, the immune system then is being chronically diminished over a long period of time. Hence leading for greater potential of sickness, right, as a result of this. But let's say it's all good, right, and the threat subsides, yeah. Well, then our good old hormone acetylcholine, the neurotransmitter acetylcholine, is released, and that allows for the threat hormone levels to reduce. These things return to normal, including our immune system's function, and that's ultimately where we end up as the body returns to normal. This is a great system for acute stressors. It can be deadly, that is, it can diminish our effectiveness to fight off disease when we're talking about chronic stressors. So that's the importance in knowing the difference between acute and chronic stressors, and to try and limit our exposures to stressors to try and ameliorate chronic stressors in our lives, because we don't have a system that's well adapted to chronic stressors. Now, health psychology, right, examines how biological, social, psychological factors influence health and illness. Health psychologists use psychological science, that is, empirically supported, evidence-based ideas, right, to prevent illness, improve healthcare systems. And this is straight from the American Psychological Association. So when we see biopsychology, right, or psychoneuroimmunology, what we're kind of looking at is biological, psychological, and social research combining to offer us some of the best health solutions. Now, translational research then is, and I heard Barb Anderson, Dr. Anderson, talk about this in one of our faculty meetings, and I was impressed. So I looked up translational research because this is something she does, and I wanted to fully understand how it applies. It's a process of applying knowledge from basic biology and clinical trials to techniques and tools that address critical medical needs. So notice, we talk about often science as being kind of this ivory tower, laboratory, artificial environment. Translational research is how do we get it out of the lab and get it into practice, in a nutshell. And I know that's really kind of minimizing the impact of what I'm talking about. It's far more than that, but I'm going to keep it simple. It uses an integrated team of experts who are focused on translating useful information from laboratories to doctors' offices to practitioners. So it's going from the empirical to the practical, right? And it's a bench to bedside bridge. Then that is a laboratory bench to patient bedside. And so this is a field of study in and of itself, and that might interest you guys, when you're thinking about careers, especially I know a lot of you are talking about psychology. And then this just lays out the different levels. So TO is research, biomedical research. T1 is the translation to humans, right? T2 is the translation to patients, right, including clinical trials. T3 is the translation to practice. So notice, it's just a systematic approach. And I'm so happy that people are taking the systematic approach so that we most effectively learn how to apply empirical findings. And this just blew me away, right? But, right? Translational research applied to us. Note how it synthesizes so well with the Holy Trinity from the previous module. And what we're talking about here is, what can I learn from my reading, and how can I take what I learned from my reading, right, or the videos I watch, to my life? And to me, this is translational analysis. How do I translate things that I read in books about, improvements in health to how I live my life? And I want you guys, please, to all think about that. When you read an idea, that's fine to read the idea and say, oh, okay, so it was effective and it did this. But can I use it? How might I implement it? And that's, to me, how translational research can kind of inform us at the lay or naive level, right? What is a possible solution or remedy? Has it been tested, empirically validated? Has it been worked for me or others previously? How do I know, right? So make us good consumers of information that's coming at us. How do I make it part of my life and or helpful for others to adopt it? So we can take a very scientific, systematic approach to translational research, and I think we can simplify it and boil it down to the choices of the interventions that we want to employ for ourselves. Things like, has it been demonstrated to be effective? Who has it been effective for? Am I a part of that group? Can I implement this in my life? Or are there barriers that might prevent me from doing so, and I should look for another potential solution? Again, being critical consumers, and especially when we're talking about orienting in a kind of a self-help area. Let's talk a little bit about pain and discomfort. I hate this picture, so let's move on. And you say, why are you using? Because I think it looked painful, right? Pain and discomfort impair performance and coping ability, and psychologists recommend that we space aggravating tasks or chores so that discomfort doesn't build to the point where it compounds stress and impairs our performance. So if there's stuff that's going to take a toll on your body, spread it out, right? If there's stuff that's going to take a toll on your psyche, spread it out. And then you say, well, what about final exams? And I'm saying, like, well, maybe we need to treat students better and not pile all that work onto the end and overload students with stress. Maybe there'd be some way to do that in a more gradual fashion over time, right, rather than kill people at the end of a semester. Right? So that's on us. A Gallup poll found that 89% of adults experience pain at least once a month. My pain is back pain, and the back pain comes from selling my body, right, to construction sites, selling my body to the lumber mill back in the day. And there's only so much your body can do, and mine has been pushed to the limit in a lot of different occupations in that regard. So I'm just one of those 89% who suffer kind of this chronic pain. And now I space out my tasks, or I get help, or I use mechanisms that help me with my work, because I'm not going to give up physical endeavors, but I do have to be smarter about it. So pain overview usually originates at the point of contact. That is, cat bites you or some such. Have an extensive nervous system to communicate pain messages to keep ourselves safe, right? The pain message is communicated to the brain by the release of prostaglandins, right? Analgesic drugs such as aspirin are designed to inhibit this prostaglandin activity. So pain overview then, the brain triggers the release of endorphins, which lock into the receptors in the nervous system for chemicals that transmit pain, right? And once the endorphin key is in the lock, pain-causing chemicals can't transmit their message. And that's one way that, let's say, the runner's high, right, effectively allows us to run further once we get over that hump right, and we start to release the endorphins, then we have the belief that we can run for a much longer time than, let's say, the first 5 minutes of the run. Coping with pain, get accurate information about the nature of the pain and where it's coming from. Distraction is sometimes works. If people get immersed in some other task, they might forget their pain momentarily, and this really depends on the individual and the level of pain. I don't want to minimize anybody's pain in this discussion, right? Oh, that's a horrible thing to say about one's own lecture. Hypnosis might work for some. Relaxation and biofeedback is another technique. Coping with irrational beliefs. But think about translational analysis. What are you going to do if you experience pain? You're going to see the possible remedies for that pain. You're going to vet those remedies. You're going to say, who says so? Based on what? For which pain sufferers? And is it something that I can implement into my life, right? Or closing the gate on pain, right? Acupuncture. Own the pain. And I don't know that that's a great, some people say, well, just experience the pain fully and you'll become habituated. I don't know. Again, you do the investigation and you begin to consider what is most likely to work for you, right? So pros and cons, and then probability. Remember, this is from a past assignment. Compute that stuff and make your selection based on that. And then be clear of what successful intervention would look like. Okay. We're going to go on to part 2.